My name is Fanny Justin. I'm 32 years old. The day my family cut me off didn't come with shouting or slammed doors, no Thanksgiving blow-up, no ugly confrontation in the driveway. It came quietly, so quietly I almost missed it while I was brushing my teeth. My phone buzzed on the bathroom counter. I glanced down, expecting a spam alert or a work email. Instead, it was our family group chat, the same one I'd never muted, because some part of me still believed in us. The message was from my dad. "You're out. We don't need you anymore." I stared at it, toothpaste foaming at the corner of my mouth, waiting for the follow-up. A joke, a typo, just kidding. My dad barely texted unless he needed something, usually money transferred, or a reminder that mom's prescription needed picking up. I laughed, a short, confused sound that echoed against the tiles. Nothing else came. Then my older sister replied. Finally. That word hit harder than my dad's message ever could have. We'd never been close, but I hadn't realized she'd been waiting for this moment, like she'd rehearsed it, like cutting me loose was something to celebrate. I reread the chat, my heart strangely calm, as if my body had already accepted what my mind was still arguing with. Over the years, I'd paid her rent, twice, covered her textbooks in college, helped her buy a used car after hers got totaled. She'd said thank you once, over text, weeks late. I typed before I could stop myself. Good timing. I just canceled your payments. Then I set the phone down. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat at the counter like I was watching a storm roll in from far away. Detached, almost peaceful. At exactly 12:05 a.m., my phone lit up again. 47 new messages. I didn't open them. For the first time in years, I felt something shift inside me. Not relief, not anger, power. Because what they didn't realize, what they'd never bothered to notice, was that I wasn't just their daughter or their sister. I was the system that kept their lives running. It started 5 years earlier, after my mom's knee surgery. She needed rides to physical therapy twice a week. Dad was too busy. My sister didn't want to lose her weekend shifts, so I stepped in. Then came grocery runs, insurance forms, leaving work in the middle of meetings because Mom panicked about missing her meds. The first bill I paid was the water bill because it got shut off and no one had time to go fix it. That turned into a habit. Somehow, I became the emergency fund, the ride service, the emotional support line, the unpaid assistant who never clocked out. And I never said no, not once. I told myself that's what family does. You don't keep score until they do. A month ago, my dad got promoted. Not a small bump, a real salary, real money, real security for the first time in years. I didn't even hear it from him. My aunt mentioned it casually at a barbecue. That night, I texted him congratulations. He replied with a thumbs up emoji. Within a week, the requests stopped. My mom canceled our weekly coffee. My sister stopped replying to my check-ins. No more can you help us with. No more can you send. Just silence. I thought maybe they were finally standing on their own. I was wrong. They just didn't need me anymore. That was the part that hurt, the casualness of it. The way they discarded me like an old coat taking up space in the closet. No explanation, no gratitude, just you're out. So I made it official. I went through every subscription tied to my name, their phone plan, Dad's music streaming, Mom's reading app, the Netflix account my sister used more than anyone else. One by one, I canceled them. I stopped the monthly transfers for groceries and utilities, removed myself from the shared calendar, blocked them from my rideshare account, changed passwords I knew they used every weekend. I don't think they realized how many invisible strings I was holding until I cut them. At 12:10 a.m., after I'd closed the last account, I finally opened the messages. My mom had gone from confused to panicked. What do you mean canceled? What payments? My dad tried to sound tough. We'll figure it out without you. My sister, always dramatic, went straight for the throat. You're being a selfish brat. Hope it was worth it. Then came the guilt. After everything we've done for you. I closed the app without replying. I slept better that night than I had in years. And I didn't know it yet, but that silence was only the calm before they decided to take back what they believed was theirs. I woke up the next morning to a kind of quiet that felt unnatural. Not peaceful, hollow. Like something had been ripped out of the air and left a vacuum behind. I made coffee, stood at the counter, let it go cold. My phone sat face down beside me, vibrating every few minutes like it was dying slowly. When I finally flipped it over, the family group chat showed 63 unread messages. I didn't open them right away. I already knew what they'd say. Guilt first, then threats, then revisionist history. Eventually, curiosity won. The first message was from my mom. "You're really gonna do this to your own family?" The next one came seconds later. "I can't believe how ungrateful you are. We took care of you for years." Years. That word sat heavy in my chest. Years of what? Because if we were keeping score, I could list mine in detail. Rent I covered, groceries I paid for, weekends I canceled, work meetings I walked out of, vacations I never took. Then came the threats. "You need to return everything you have that came from us. The car, the furniture, the things we gave you when you moved out." I actually laughed out loud this time. The car? Every payment came from my account. The couch? A secondhand brown thing they didn't want anymore because their new one was being delivered. Everything they claimed they'd given me was just something they didn't need. Then my mom sent the message that emptied me out completely. "You are no longer welcome in this family." It didn't make me angry. It didn't even hurt the way I expected. It just left me hollow, like reading an eviction notice from a stranger. So I made it permanent. That afternoon, I called a locksmith. He showed up within the hour. I didn't just change the front door. I changed the side door, the garage keypad, even the useless little lock on the backyard shed. I collected every spare key I could find. There was still one under the fake rock near the fence. I crushed it with a hammer. Then I went digital. Every account I'd ever helped them set up, gone. Streaming services, auto payments, insurance portals, the shared family calendar I'd managed for years, filled with doctor appointments, birthdays, reminders, deleted. In 2 hours, I erased myself from their lives. Or so I thought. That night, I opened the fireproof box in my closet and pulled out the folder labeled Emergency. Inside was my lawyer's number. I'd hired him 2 years earlier after a freelance client tried to stiff me on payment. I'd kept him on retainer ever since, just in case. Something in my gut told me this wasn't over. I called him and told him everything, every transfer, every bill, every account. He told me to document everything. Luckily for me, I always had. Receipts, screenshots, bank statements. I didn't trust memory. I trusted proof. "You're covered," he said, "but stay alert." That word stuck with me. Because when people feel entitled to you long enough, rejection doesn't register as a boundary. It registers as betrayal. And betrayal makes people dangerous. A few days later, my cousin sent me a screenshot. It was a Facebook post from my mom. Soft pastel background. Cursive font. Sometimes the child you sacrifice the most for is the one who turns their back when you need them. The comments were already pouring in. "So sorry you're going through this. Kids today are so selfish. You did your best." My mom didn't respond to questions, just said it was too painful to talk about. "Please pray." I didn't comment. I didn't defend myself. That part of me, the part that needed to explain, was gone. For about 2 weeks, things were quiet. No calls, no messages, no guilt-laced ambushes through relatives. I started to think maybe it was really over. Then one Thursday morning, I opened my closet. I reached for an old book I'd hidden cash in since I was a teenager and felt nothing. I flipped through the pages, checked again. My hands started shaking. $2,000. Gone. No broken locks, no forced entry. They hadn't broken in. They'd let themselves in. And in that moment, sitting on the floor with an empty book in my hands, I knew exactly who had done it and how. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat there on the closet floor, the hollowed out book open in my lap like it might suddenly decide to give everything back. It didn't. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the precision. They hadn't trashed the place. They hadn't touched my laptop or the TV or anything they could have pawned quickly. They came in, went straight to the hiding spots, took exactly what they were looking for, and left. Clean, quiet, surgical. That's when it clicked. I'd changed the front door, the side door, the garage keypad, but the basement door, an old exterior door we barely used, I'd forgotten that one. 2 winters ago, my dad had come over to look at a leak. I'd given him that key. I never asked for it back. They still had it. They didn't break in. They entered. I locked the basement door manually, stood there for a moment with my hand still on the knob, and then I called the police. The officer was kind but honest. Without signs of forced entry or surveillance footage, it would be hard to press charges. I gave names anyway, told him exactly how they'd come in, what they'd taken, and why. After he left, I called my lawyer. He came over the next morning with a notebook and a look on his face that surprised me. He looked angrier than I was. "Do you have proof the money existed?" he asked. I handed him my phone. Years earlier, I'd taken a photo of the hollowed-out book as a joke for a friend. You could see the cash inside, half full, with the caption, "My teenage paranoia finally paid off." That was enough. He drafted a demand letter that same day. 5 days to return the stolen funds, or we'd pursue civil theft and restitution. It wasn't emotional. It wasn't dramatic. It was cold, direct, and precise. For the first time in weeks, I felt protected. 2 days later, my sister finally broke the silence. Not my parents, her. "Seriously? You're suing mom and dad? Are you out of your mind? They're having a rough time. You have money. What's the big deal?" I didn't reply. A few hours later, another message came through. "You're being cruel. You know they wouldn't do that if they weren't desperate. You're still part of this family whether you like it or not." That last line made everything crystal clear. To them, family didn't mean love. It meant access. Access to my time, my money, my silence. On the 5th day, I got confirmation the letter had been received. Still no response. No apology, no explanation. Then my sister showed up at my house. She didn't knock. She banged on the door, yelling my name like we were on some trashy reality show. I stayed out of sight and let her shout. "You don't sue your own family," she screamed. "You know why they did it. They needed it." I said nothing. Then she slipped. "They only took it because they knew you were hiding it from them." I stopped breathing. That wasn't a guess. That was an admission. She tried to backtrack, yelling about how I'd always been selfish, how I pushed them to this, but it was too late. I'd heard everything I needed. I called my lawyer the second she left. "We go forward," I said. He didn't hesitate. Within 24 hours, the legal action escalated. That's when my parents finally responded, through their attorney. They admitted to taking the money. They just claimed it wasn't theft. They called it reimbursement. According to them, the cash was partial repayment for years of support. My father claimed I'd benefited financially and emotionally from being raised. My mother listed grocery bills from when I lived at home, utilities, wear and tear on their car from errands I'd run for them. Then they took it further. They countersued me. They demanded repayment for unpaid familial services. My sister even included a claim for emotional distress caused by my toxic behavior. I sat in my lawyer's office holding that paperwork like it belonged to someone else. "This is insane," I said. He nodded. "It's strategic. They're trying to scare you into backing down." It didn't work. For the first time in my life, I wasn't confused. I wasn't doubting myself. I saw the pattern clearly. Every boundary I'd ever set, they'd called betrayal. Every time I stopped giving, they rewrote the story. So I started building my case. Bank statements, screenshots, emails, years of transfers, calendars showing appointments I'd managed, emergencies I'd handled, money I'd moved. And while I was doing that, something else started happening. People found out. My sister couldn't keep quiet. She vented to anyone who would listen, trying to get sympathy. But the more she talked, the worse it sounded. They went into her house. They took her savings. Now they're suing her? It spread quietly, then all at once. My lawyer called with new information that made my stomach turn. They weren't struggling, he said, not even close. Retirement accounts, a paid-off rental property, savings sitting untouched. They hadn't taken my money because they needed it. They took it because they felt entitled to it. And with the court date approaching and their story unraveling in public, they were starting to lose control. They weren't going to let that happen quietly. The collapse didn't happen all at once. It leaked. Screenshots first, whispers second. The kind of quiet conversations that start with, "Have you heard?" and end with someone realizing the story they'd been told didn't line up. My sister had been talking a lot, trying to frame me as unhinged, as greedy, as the daughter who'd gone crazy and sued her own parents. But then someone shared the messages. My dad's text, "You're out. We don't need you anymore." My sister's reply, "Finally." My response, "Good timing. I just canceled your payments." Once those were out, the narrative cracked. People started asking questions my parents couldn't answer without lying even more. The first call came from my aunt. Her voice was shaky. "Is it true? They went into your house?" I didn't defend myself. I didn't explain. I just said, "There's a case pending. Everything will come out." She went quiet. She already knew. By the end of the week, the damage was visible. Neighbors stopped waving. Family friends stopped calling. Someone sent me a photo of my mom at the grocery store arguing with a woman near the produce aisle. Apparently, the woman had asked, "Is it true you stole from your daughter?" My mom left the cart behind and walked out in tears. It would have been sad if it hadn't been so predictable. They'd built their entire identity on appearances. Sunday smiles, church donations, holiday photos where everyone looked happy. Now that image was unraveling in public. My lawyer was relentless. He'd uncovered proof that destroyed their desperation narrative. Investment accounts, rental income, savings they'd never touched. They weren't drowning. They were angry they'd lost access to me. A week before the hearing, their attorney called. His voice was tired, flat. They wanted to settle, quietly. Full repayment, partial legal fees, confidentiality. My lawyer looked at me. "Your call." I didn't hesitate. "No deal." He smiled, just slightly. That's what I thought. 3 days later, the paperwork came through. They withdrew their countersuit, returned the full $2,000, covered part of my legal costs, and, most importantly, signed a written admission stating they'd taken the money without my consent. No apology, no phone call, just the truth, locked in ink where it couldn't be rewritten. That was enough. Once it became public record, the rest fell apart on its own. People who'd defended them stopped returning calls. Even their church quietly encouraged them to take a step back. I didn't celebrate. Winning against your own family doesn't feel like victory. It feels like amputating something infected just to survive. The money appeared back in my account 10 days later. I stared at the balance, remembering how long it had taken me to earn every dollar. That night, my sister texted, "Happy now? You win." No apology. No accountability. I blocked her. Then my parents. I changed the locks again, installed a camera system, made sure there wasn't a single key out there that could ever open my door again. A week later, I heard their rental property fell through. Tenants moved out after finding out what they'd done. Karma didn't crash down on them all at once. It dismantled them slowly, piece by piece. Still, I felt nothing resembling triumph, just exhaustion. People asked what I learned from it all. I never told the full story. I just said this. If your own parents are willing to steal from you, you never look at love the same way again. Because once the people who raised you prove they value your wallet more than your trust, you start wondering who's actually safe. For a while, it was quiet. No messages, no sightings. I thought maybe it was finally over. Then one Sunday afternoon in late fall, I turned onto my street and saw a familiar car parked near my driveway. My dad's. My heart stopped. My mom stepped out first. Older, thinner, grayer. She smiled like nothing had happened, like this was a casual visit. She walked toward me slowly and stopped just outside my property line. "Fanny," she said softly, "can we talk?" That was when I understood. They still thought there was a version of this where they could be forgiven, where they'd cry, explain, and I'd fold like I always had. They didn't understand the difference between hurt and done. I didn't answer. I turned around and walked away. I circled the block and waited until I saw their car leave. That night, my mom left a voicemail. "We just want to make things right." She still didn't get it. The next morning, I changed my number. That same day, I put my house on the market. 3 weeks later, my house sold. I didn't cry when I signed the papers. I didn't hesitate. I watched the pen move across the page like I was closing a chapter I'd already finished reading in my head. New city, new house, new locks, new number. I didn't forward my mail under my old last name. I changed my emergency contacts, updated my will, wiped every trace that could lead back to me. There was something deeply comforting about knowing they didn't know where I lived and never would. I thought that would be the end of it. 6 months passed. Then one afternoon, I found a letter in my mailbox. Not an email, not a phone call, a physical envelope. No return address, just my first name written in familiar, rounded handwriting, the soft curve on the final letter that only my mother ever used. I didn't open it right away. I set it on the kitchen counter and stared at it like it might bite. Part of me wanted to throw it away unopened. Another part, the old part, needed to know. Inside was a single page. "We're selling the house. Things have changed. You should come by before it's gone. You might want to see it one last time. Some of your things are still here." No signature. The tone was what unsettled me most. Casual. Almost normal. As if breaking into my home, stealing from me, suing me, and ambushing me outside my house hadn't ended everything. I didn't respond, but I went back anyway. I didn't contact anyone. I didn't go to the door. I parked a block away and walked past like a stranger, hood pulled low, hands in my pockets. The house looked smaller, older, empty. The porch furniture was gone. No wind chimes, no curtains in the windows. A for sale sign leaned crookedly in the yard. The grass was dead. The paint was peeling. It looked hollowed out, like something had finally caught up to it. I felt nothing. Not grief, not nostalgia, just a strange, quiet satisfaction, like watching a movie set being dismantled after the final scene. That night, I wrote a letter of my own. Just one sentence. "There's nothing left for me to collect." I didn't send it. I folded it and tucked it into the old hollowed-out book, the same one they'd emptied, and sealed it shut. Weeks later, I heard through someone distant that my parents had moved out of state. Smaller place, no familiar faces, no community left. My sister had moved in with a man she barely knew and stopped returning their calls. Their world had finally shrunk to match the size of their choices. As for me, I started over. I joined a running group, took on better freelance work, made friends who didn't ask about my family because I never brought them up. No more defending, no more hoping. One night, I sat on my back porch, watching the sun sink behind the trees, the air quiet and still, and I realized something. The story didn't end when I cut them off. It ended when I stopped waiting for an apology. It ended when I stopped needing them to understand. In the space where the pain used to live, there was room for something else. Peace. Not because they gave it to me, because I built it myself.